بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. This is the first class on فتح باب العناية بشرح النقاية. Um, we had a few classes before this on the chapter of Sawm, that is on fasting, which encourage other students to ask for more classes as well as you know engage more into this text. Specifically the because of the text being special as well as the way we were covering it, alhamdulillah. Uh, there were pros and cons in terms of how the students are used to covering in text. But this is usually how I cover text with the students that are around me when we're studying together. Um, Specifically when it comes to دراسة that is تأصيلية, that is whenever there's a linguistic discussion or a usul discussion or a hadith discussion or a balagha discussion or a hadith would be inclusive of takhrij, etc. or a in terms of a takhrij of the masail sort of discussion, the study of riwayah, etc. So we would actually see whether analyze whether what has been said in the text is valid or not. A specific style that I've studied from some of the scholars that I've had the opportunity to study fiqh Hanafi, particularly the students of Sheikh Ghulam Mustafa Sindi, rahimahullah, who would actually delve into text and including my teacher Sheikh Ghulam Muhammad al-Dadawi, who I study some Sindi, who I study some advanced fiqh text with as well as during the classes that I attended of Sheikh ʿAlī Salih al-Azhari in fiqh in terms of I mean when he would comment when I would go to his home and study with him. Some text we did with him in riwayah, but whenever we did text with him in terms of dirayah too, he would comment on his own and from his own memory. The Shaykh is blind, and he would actually bring a lot of nuqul as well as views and do tanqih and study the text very specifically. So I have also done with him a lot of like fiqh that is ta'asili, that he would actually go back and the Sheikh is always open to questions. It's one of the things that I liked about him. Actually, all these people that I'm talking about are open to questions, and they would just not just comment on the text and move on. You could ask them any question related to the text, and they would respond to you, including if a dhamir, even if they don't understand what this dhamir goes back to, contrary to the understanding that, well, if it's not something that relates to the practicality of the issues, then it should not be engaged in. That makes sense for commoners. Um, with all due respect, with all due respect to whoever is of that view, but for commoners, it does make sense that they focus on whatever is the action of the limbs. But as al-Qari, the author of Fatḥ Bāb al Inayah, himself says, the scholars, when he talks about the ulama in Sharh al in one of the instances, he says, علمهم كله عمل بل خير عمل. He says that all the engagements of ilm that the Ahlul Ilm have, they're all considered to be amal itself. بل خير عمل, but best da'mal. And in order to like progress and go into further directions in the sciences, it makes sense that we focus more on the technicalities as students who are striving to become scholars like myself and the other brothers that are present here. And then develop a great understanding, and the things that relate to the limbs, they just come along. Inshallah, the a'mal that are considered to be ظاهرة and even batina ones, that both the a'mal and the ulum, etc. Which is why coming to this text is I think that I preferred during a discussion with certain students, I always preferred teaching this text over others. Let me just give you a short background on the text. I did talk about it for those students who are interested in knowing a bit about al-Qari, the author, etc. More, they can go back to that text, the Ramadan course that we had. But I will touch on it since this is the beginning of the text itself. The text is actually a commentary on al-Nuqayah, which is the work, as it says here, is al-Sadr al-Shari'ah. عبيد الله بن مسعود المحبوبي, who passed away توفي سنة 7 40 بعد 700, he says. He passed away in 747. Rahimahullah ta'ala. And he is one of the greatest individuals when it comes to the transition that the Hanafiya went through towards in terms of the Jam' understanding and usul. So he's a known usuli. He does have hold a lot of views that might not be accepted by the likes of al-Bihari, the author of Muslim al-Thubut, or the commentators of Ibn Hammam's al-Tahrir, as well as others that came after him, who further analyzed ilm al-usul, that is principal jurisprudence, and but he definitely was, along with Ibn Shihna, one of the most prominent figures when it comes to making that transition when they analyzed the text of the Jumhur, the majority, that is the Malikiyya and the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila, and they kind of merged these two uslubs, that is the uslub of the fuqaha and the uslub of the mutakallimun. So his texts usually have this shade of there's always this usuli towering over all the different discussion that he has, as well as the one that has taken a lot from the writings of Ibn Hajib and al-Razi and other usulis from the other schools. As you know, that's actually the combination that he went towards when he put together his tanqih and his tawdih, which is famously studied by all students of knowledge who study fiqh Hanafi as well as usul fiqh Hanafi. So he actually took a niqayah, which is actually a condensation of al-wiqayah. What is al-wiqayah? Al-wiqayah is a text that's based on al-hidayah. Its actual complete name is wiqayat al-riwayah fi masail al-hidayah. So wiqayat al-riwayah is known to be a special text, and which was got a lot of acceptance by a lot of the Hanafiya, and it was considered to be something that had like a special kind of like quality in it, that it focused on uh all the riwayas that came on al-Hidayah. It just kind of condensed it, so like the mukhtasar itself was called al-Wiqayah, which became a very prominent mukhtasar. That is actually what do you call it? I had multiple different commentaries on it too. Al-Biqaya, it had a lot of commentaries on it. In fact, the importance of it is that even certain like the ta'birat, the certain expressions that come in Al-Biqaya, they promoted like works and works were not it. Like Al-Allama Al-Qasim, that is Ibn Qatlubagha, he has this famous risala called Al-Fawaid al-Jullah في مسألة اشتباه القبلة. That is actually based on an expression that came in al-wiqayah and regarding the ishtibah of the qibla. That is, if someone is not sure which way is the qibla, and the matters of estimation of tahari that come, and he wrote an entire risala on this. Just because of the expression that comes in al-wiqayah and what is understood from it, what can possibly be understood from it. And the commentaries on it were interesting commentaries that al-wiqayah accepted too. The shuruh of al-wiqayah, there are many. One of them that's a very famous one is the one of Ibn Malik, also known as Ibn Farishte in Farsi, as well as the Sharh al Nuqayah that was written. So with the Sharh al Nuqayah, which is also Sadr al-Shari'ahs, he also made a mukhtasar of it that is known as the Nuqayah. So Al-Hidayah, which has its own discussion, and it's very famous for students' knowledge about Al-Hidayah, is a famous work of Al-Marghinani, Burhanuddin, and is perhaps the most relied upon or the most popular text of the Hanafiya. And it was um, uh, something that gained like a lot of traction. Al-Hidayah, that is. And then Al-Wiqayah was compiled, when which the riwayas were omitted, etc. And it was made a mukhtasar, and the mukhtasar of the mukhtasar al-Nuqayah was made. And on top of that, the commentary was done, that is by al-Qari rahimahullah, which is called Fath Bab al Inayah bi Sharh al Nuqayah. So this commentary that we're looking at is actually a commentary on al-Nuqayah, which is a mukhtasar of the Wiqayah, which is technically a mukhtasar of al-Hidayah. These are all the famous mutun of the Hanafiya, and they're studied, and between these lines, you can definitely find yeah, their reliability and with the other texts along with them too. Something that I've mentioned in my own text on the different mustalahat of the Hanafiya, that these are the famous mutun, the mutun arba'ah and the mutun thalatha. So I said بداية البرهان والوقاية والكنز والمختار والنقاية ومجمع البحرين والمختصر هي المتون كلها يعتبر أن يطلق الكتاب أو يطلق الكتاب فهو المختصر أو القدوري كذاك الاشتهر وكذلك اشتهر والكنز والكتاب والوقاية منها التي يدعى لها الثلاثة. So like the mutun, they come to the Bidayah of al-Burhan, that is al-Marghinani, is a famous text, and al-Wiqayah is a famous text, al-Kanz is a famous text, al-Mukhtar is a famous text, al-Nuqayah is a famous text, Majma' al-Bahrain is a famous text, and the Mukhtasar is a famous text. These seven are considered to be the main mutun, the famous ones. هي المتون كلها يعتبر, I said that is in my منظومة عند المصطلحات, أن يطلق الكتاب فهو المختصر أو القدوري كذلك اشتهر, and المختصر sometimes refers to, sorry, the kitab refers to the mukhtasar or sometimes al-Quduri itself. You say في القدوري. والكنز والكتاب والوقاية منها التي يدعى لها الثلاثة. So the mutun thalatha, you have كنز الدقائق of al-Nasafi, al-Kitab, or known as the mukhtasar of al-Imam al-Quduri, and al-Wiqayah. So what they refer to as the three main texts of the Hanafiya, the مختصرات. One of them is الكنز and القدوري and الوقاية, or the مختصر, you can say the مختصر مع الإمام القدوري رحمه الله. والرابع المختار قيل المجمع لهذه قالوا المتون الأربع. And there's a dispute about the fourth one. Is it المختار of الموصلي, or is it المجمع? Either one of the, which one is it? But altogether the كنز and the مختصر and the وقاية and the مختار and the مجمع discussion, these are called the متون أربعة. So you would notice that al-Nuqayah is also declared by al-Laknawi and many others that came before him as one of the relied upon mutun, and al-Wiqayah as well. It's original too. So this commentary is really interesting in terms of covering those portions that are not really covered, but they still are connected to al-Hidayah and other similar texts of the Hanafiya. But why is there anything special, more special than that? So going back to the critical analysis or thinking that is required in fiqh. You can say that this text is actually not even a regular fiqh text. It's actually pretty much a fiqh muqaran text. You would see that the style of writing as well as al-Qari's takes on certain things makes you feel like, well, he's not really. It's not a regular fiqh text that just goes and relates pieces of information in a specific manner. There's a special style. What is a special style? Well, one thing is that he's not really um, someone who's someone who just accepts pieces of information as there is. So you notice that he does a lot of takhrijat. He does a lot of documentation narrations. He would mention that this narration comes from there, that place, and that. And there's a lot of the gradings that he's brought forth. It seems like they're from Nasb al-Raya of al-Zaylai, which is the takhrij documentation of the narrations that are present in al-Hidayah. And but he does comment here and there that are his own things, own understandings about the different ahadith. And at the same time, one of the criticisms that are famous about al-Hidayah is that the narrations that come in al-Hidayah are not that strong. So, like for example, the very the very first narration, or not the very first one, I guess. In al-Hidayah, there's a famous narration that comes on Shaf'a. So al-Marghinani did over there, and people criticize um, the people who have criticized others on this, but it's very obvious that there's something definitely went wrong. In Kitab al-Shaf'a, for example, al-Marghinani rahimahullah starts discussing the view of the Hanafiya about the jar, that is the neighbor, having the right to have shafa'a or not. So what he does is he goes like, well, and the tartib that is there to establish it to that person or not. So he goes like, well, there's a narration that comes that supports her meaning. He says, ولقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام جار الدار أحق بالدار والأرض ينتظر له وإن كان غائبا إذا كان طريقهما واحدة. He mentioned this as لقوله عليه السلام, while he's mentioned another hadith before it, فلقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام الشفاعة لشريك لم يقاسم. And then he mentions another narration after this, is ولقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام الجار أحق بسقبه قيل يا رسول الله ما سقبه قال شفعته ويروى الجار أحق بشفعته. So he mentions لقوله, and he separates all narrations, but these two are not separated. He doesn't say جار الدار يحق بالدار والأرض ينتظر له وإن كان غائبا إذا كان طريقهما واحدة. This narration he brings forth as one, but if you were to actually see Ibn Hajar رحمه الله الدراية, as well as al-ʿInāyah al-Bināyah, in his commentary on Hidayah, they both mention Ibn Hajar's words are that this is ملفق من حديثين. What al-Marghinani did was he mistakenly took two narrations and combined them together and thought it was one narration. And Al-Aini rahimahullah calls it murakkab min hadithain. He says that this is what he did is he composed his own one hadith, while it was just one hadith. Like it was two separate hadiths that he combined together. جار الدار أحق بالدار والأرض, and the other narration that comes about إذا كان طريقهما واحدة. So there are like other problems too, as well as like narrations that might not be that strong in terms of general argumentation when certain proofs are the adillah that are naqliyyah that are brought. You would notice that. So what he does is he purposely goes after these narrations in Fath Bab al Inayah, which is very interesting because of the popularity and the traction that al-Hidayah got. You would notice that, and I've actually heard this from people too, that they would say رواه صاحب الهداية. They would say رواه صاحب الهداية, which is very strange, because of the fact that you cannot rely on the people who are not the people of the fen. At the same time, not those that have been criticized by the people of the same fen as not really keeping up with the tradition of relating hadith or not. And I've mentioned this many times in many of my classes that this should not be considered to be some sort of low blow or undeserving criticism of al-Marghinani. This is the point, is like this does not really disprove his fiqh. Al-Marghinani's fiqh is not in his hadith. Everyone knows that. Otherwise, Al-Hidayah would not have gained popularity among scholars of hadith as well. It's actually in his focus on the aqliyah, and particularly the maqasid discussions that he has in Al-Hidayah, which are phenomenal. Phenomenal, sorry. If anyone goes through the Hidayah properly, with proper discussions relating to it, and the hawashi and the shuruh that are written on it, and then all the discussions that relate to that, they will realize that you come out with actual tafaqquh, like a proper understanding of fiqh. And if it's coupled with a style that is the style of al-Qari rahimahullah, then you would notice that it's very different. A similar style of this is definitely the style of Ibn Humam rahimahullah in Fath Qadir, that is his sections particularly. And you would notice that al-Qari in Fath Bab al Inayah too, he relies heavily on the style of al-Khwarizmi and Ibn Humam in their kind of respective commentaries on al-Hidayah. In fact, sometimes he even would like quote them verbatim without mentioning that he's actually quoting from them. So you would notice that he actually has that. Other than that, the takhrij process of it, when you focus on it, you would also notice that some of the istidlalat, some of the ways of presenting an argument that is brought here or done here, along with the criticism that he does of certain things, such as certain narrations he would bring in and say, well, that's not really established, or he would interpret it in a way that does not have a precedence. You would also notice that some of the istidlals do not have a precedence either, at least from the Hanafi side. Like he brings his own ta'lil or istidlal in a way that he would say that, well, you can use this as an argument too, or a response to. So there is like original content in this commentary. It's not like some of the commentaries that you come across, they're usually just like a lot of nuqul, transmitted text that is just brought and related in a way that you can definitely benefit from it, but it's more of a jam' method than an actual دراسة دراسة تحليلية. Like you would say that this is a study of the text in a way that it will promote analysis. Like there's no actual critical analysis that is done. So he would do that a lot, and there's a specific method, but that is very close to al-Hidayah. That is the fact that he would actually bring the opinions, and then he would have his own preference in the end. Is it a book of fiqh muqaran in terms of every single sense? Not really. It's really hard to say that because of the fact that you can notice that he has a slight bias, which is nothing wrong, because any text from any of the madhabs you go to, you will notice there's a slight bias, not a bias in a negative way, that he will actually not accept the truth, is that the fact that some sort of validation is done in a way that could still be open to more criticism or analysis, and not that this will actually disprove uh, the view itself, which takes us back to it's like a full circle that what should not be taken in these discussions is that, well, if something is disproved from the Hanafi side, that automatically should result in the understanding that, well, the Hanafis are wrong on this. This is not what we're doing here. We're actually doing what is called fiqh istidlali. We're looking at the fiqh discussions from istidlal perspective. So the adillah aqliyyah, the adillah naqliyyah, the rational proofs and the textual proofs, we will analyze them as they deserve to be analyzed. And we will grow, inshallah, in terms of our tafaqquh and fiqh by these analyses, as well as get stronger in understanding of fiqh in general and fiqh Hanafi in particular. This is why I think that this text is actually amazing. It's very distinguished too. They have discussions that I've come across in Fatḥ Bāb al Inayah that did not exist, at least in the works that are in print or I have access to in manuscripts. I was not able to find similar commentary anywhere. In fact, not even the writings of al-Qari, to the extent that he has a lot of writings, he has his famous commentary on the Mishkat al-Masajih. He has a commentary on it. He has a famous commentary on al-Shifa wal-Qadi. There are certain discussions there that he does not bring it elsewhere as well, but like you would expect that he would comment on that hadith that he's brought here in Fath Bab al Inayah, for example, in a similar manner in the Mirqat too, but he actually does not end up doing that. He just then you start valuing this text, that this text needs independent attention and coverage, for sure. As well as like who he was and and whatever it needs to be understood. Then that's that, and as well as like the takhrij things that you will see that the style of writing is slightly different from the other commentators because he actually does a lot of ihalas too, that he would mention that this narration is found in that text, etc. So it's like a proper fiqh istidlali exposure that you will get from the Hanafi side, which is quite lacking, which is why sometimes like when they're discussing that what text should be studied before al-Hidayah, the Hidayah itself when studied properly, that is. If Al-Hidayah is studied properly, with uh, with the style of like a certain way of teaching it, as it became popular in certain areas more than others, then it goes into certain discussions that would not allow you to get exposure to others. Fath Bab al Inayah has been argued to be one of those writings that you should study definitely before Al-Hidayah. So it's either Sharh al Nuqayah or Fath Bab al Inayah. A lot of people do incline towards when there are a lot of um, special things to explore in Sharh al as well. But this is not the class for it. Sharh al has received a lot of traction too. But all these works, they purpose the facilitation of you going towards al-Hidayah as the final text, or the because it's a semi-final, like as in if you go towards some of the writings of Ibn Abdin, etc., to further expand on it. But obviously that also requires a more critical take on it too, which is quite lacking. It's probably more lacking, a lot more lacking than it is when it comes to Hidayah and its different mutuns like al-Nuqayah and al-Wiqayah related to them. And alhamdulillah, well, we're doing that. So let's start with the text, inshallah. Everything else is clear. Al-Qari, everyone knows about him, as well as I've expanded on it before when we did the Kitab al-Sawm from the same text. That is his Nur al-Din, Abu al-Hasan, Ali ibn Sultan Muhammad. It says Sultan Muhammadin. I would say that it's what's better, Sultani Muhammadin. That is Sultan Abu Muhammad al-Harawi, al-Qari. He was known as al-Harawi, al-Qari because of his engagement in ilm al-Qira'ah. He also has a commentary on the Shatibi that's very famous, as well as if you were to see his notes on Tafsir al-Jalalain, you will see how much he expands on al-Qira'ah. He was actually a person who was well versed in the science of the Qira'ah as well, and he was from Herat, which is currently in Afghanistan. So let's start with the text, inshallah. Um, and any questions the students have, they can ask me, inshallah, at the end of the class. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه أستعين ربي تمم بالخير. This, what comes in square brackets, is not really something that you can say is um, um, I'm thinking now, like, should we actually get into the commentaries, the biographies of the authors? But I guess we can do that in our next class, inshallah. You can consider this class as well as the second class a bit of the intro, but I just really wanted to get in there, start the text a little too. So it's not just an intro that does not have the text done at all. So this what is present in square brackets is not really a part of the text itself. The tasmiyah, it seems like all the manuscripts of the text has tasmiyah in it, so it could very easily be said that this is actually al-Qari's inclusion of it. But وَبِهِ أَسْتَعِينُ رَبِّ تَمِّمْ بِالْخَيْرِ, and it is through Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that I seek assistance, or it is only Allah's assistance that I seek. Rabbi, Rabb, my Lord, تَمِّمْ بِالْخَيْرِ, that allow me to finish this text with goodness, or the betterment that is required in it. But this is this whole I mean this seems like a dua that could be possibly made by a person who is um writing the text too. So we'll look at it inshallah from a different perspective. So he says Alhamdulillah alladhi ja'ala, this is the verb, جعل العلماء ورثة الأنبياء. جعل, as mentioned in the famous discussion of Sulam al-Ulum, that is جعل that comes as a basit, and جعل that comes as a مركب. Also like known as the جعل that is مفرد. The جعل that is مفرد, it comes in the معنى of خلق, in like creating something. And the جعل that is comes in the معنى of تصير, or also called مركب sometimes. That is the one that comes in the meaning of صير. So جعل that comes in the معنى of خلق, and جعل that comes in the معنى of تصير. And the one who made the scholars, the ورثة, that is the which is ورثة. This is the correct way of reading, and there's a very common mistake that people make here, and they say ورثة with the sukun al-dara. There is no such lugha. This is actually a فاعلة, فاعلة, which is one of the broken throws. As Ibn Malik رحمه الله says, فعلة لفاعل وصف ذكر يعقل ذا لا من صحيح وندر. That is when these conditions are fulfilled. فعلة comes as a fa'il, as a broken plural for fa'ilun. So this is a broken plural for warithun, which means someone who inherits. This is like an ishara, you can say, like pointing towards the famous hadith as narrated by Abu Dawud, as well as Tirmidhi and Ahmed, with different wordings. And the chains of transmission for all of them are actually debatable, but altogether, يعني, with the majmu' of it, you can definitely say that they can reach the level of hasan. That is لغيره. So the narration has إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء وإن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما ورثوا العلم, that they left ilm. And then there's some other otherwise recensions, it comes to وَوَرَّثُوا الْعِلْمِ فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. That is, indeed, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. وإن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء وإن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما. And indeed, the prophets, they did not leave behind gold coins and silver coins, right? The dinar and dirham. ورث العلم, what they left behind is sacred knowledge. فمن أخذه أخذ بحظ وافر. So whoever took that from them, he has taken a portion that is abundant, in terms of, like, it's something that cannot be replaced. It's something that you would not replace with mal. Ilm is always given precedence over mal. So this narration is what he's referring to. Um, this One of the ways of understanding this irth too, which I would say that it's very interesting because it relates to this part of it, that is the text that we're covering, is that this narration is also understood by many others as something that would allow you to understand that the scholars are the ones who promote critical thinking. Al-Madhari rahimahullah, who is al-Qāḍī Thana'ullah al-Madhari, who passed away in 1225. He was known for his expertise in ilm al-usul. He was usuli and a very and a critical thinker too, from the Indian subcontinent. And um, in fact, many of the biographers have even written that he claimed ijtihad in the Hanafi school. I mean, not like al-istiqlal, or بالاستقلال, and rather just within the school that he had a lot of opinions that were considered to be not in line with the famous schools famous opinions of the school. That's because he believed that he had reached a level, and you can see that his expertise is something that complements his understandings too. But he mentions at one point in his tafsir, he says الجدال بالحجة والأصل والمقصود من البعثة. He says that the argumentation or dialectic or whatever you want to call it, or jidal, they're both interchangeable, that this process of presenting arguments, regardless of whether we're looking at finding the truth here or not. Because the fact that, let's say that the author of Al-Hidayah, how many times does he actually bring the proofs from the other side? And then we would say that, well, if he's why is he bringing those arguments? He's not necessarily bringing them to establish the truth. He's bringing it to refute it. So there has to be always a side when you would present an argument in its most appropriate or a competent manner, but it is to refute it sometimes. So when that could be done, it could be done in certain things when the truth is not really found too. But the prophets, their jidal bil hujjah huwa al-asl wal maqsood min al-ba'tha, that the delegation or the mission of the prophets, that was a support. That's the asl of it, and the maqsood of it, the objective of it, has been this type of argumentation that promotes critical thinking. وَلِذَا قَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم, they say it is for this reason that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم has said, العلماء ورثة الأنبياء. He says that it is due to this reason that he has said that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. So the prophets, what they did was the first thing that they would do, establish hujjah. They would prove their points, and they would um, as they would be the ones who would preserve the knowledge of God, the knowledge that has been sent down by God, and pass it to others in an appropriate way. This is what the ulama do. So this is how they're considered to be the waratha. So وخلاصة الأولياء, and also the fact that they're considered to be the ones that are considered to be the khulasa of the awliya. يعني the ones that are from the awliya, from the ones that are considered to be the friends of God, the ones that are even more specifically, or the closest, I guess, if that's a way to understand it, the closest people to the awliya. This reminds me of the discussion that you know that Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, rahimahullah, he has in his Az-Zawajir. He discusses that, the discussion of the kabira that relates to um, um, the, cursing or having animosity against those who are the friends of God, right? So while he's discussing this, and he goes like, yeah, I mean, before he comes to discussing that, he goes like, well, whatever has been said about the people of knowledge and and respecting them, and the impermissibility of belittling them and treating them poorly, etc. That will be also in addition to the awliya aspect of it, that you cannot do the same thing towards the awliya. So while commenting on this, he says, وَسَيَأْتِي قَرِيبًا فِي أَذِيَّةِ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ. He's like, I will soon comment on the fact that whoever harms the awliya, while he's talking about the scholars, the ulama, he says, ما هو صريح في هذا. He says something that is very, very explicit in this. إِذِ الْأَوْلِيَاءُ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ. Is that because in reality, the friends of God, هم العلماء العاملون. They are the scholars of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the ones who have knowledge and practice both. He's like the awliya في الحقيقة هم العلماء العاملون. He's like, those are the prophets, sorry, the actual friends of God in reality are the people of knowledge and practice. That is a combination that is considered to be a representation of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, contrary to the ulama that do not have amal on whatever they knew, like the Mu'tazila, the Shia, etc., and others. الذين يدعو لهم ملائكة السماء والسمك في الماء والطير في الهواء. He says that the one that is the ones al-Qari rahimahullah, he continues. He says the ones يدعو لهم ملائكة السماء. That is the angels of the of the heaven, or you can say of the sky, in the sky, وَالسَّمَكُ فِي الْمَاءِ, and the fishes that are stomach is considered to be a ismu jins, which is brought with that's why you say fish as in the meaning of the plural of it or the genus of it, and the fish, like all the fish that are in uh, all the water, both of them are considered to be jins. The only difference is the first one is considered to be ifradi, the second one is considered to be jam'i. والطير في الهواء, and the طير في الهواء, that is all the birds that are in the sky, like in say, or like in the air, literally. So all of them, they actually do dua from. This is also a reference to another hadith that comes, is actually part like of a hadith, and the same hadith is وَإِنَّ الْعُلَمَاءَ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاء. It actually has when it begins, مَنْ سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا يَطْلُبُ فِيهِ عِلْمًا سَلَكَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ بِهِ طَرِيقًا مِنْ طُرُقِ الْجَنَّةِ وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضًا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. That the what do you call it? The angels, they spread their wings for the students of, for a student of knowledge, because of how much they agree with them. وإن العالم لا يستغفر له من في السماوات ومن في الأرض والحيتان في جوف الماء. It says, and whoever is in the heavens and the earth, they pray for the forgiveness of the person of knowledge. والحيتان في جوف الماء, as well as the fishes, because حوت a lot of times comes in the meaning of fish. Sometimes translated as whales, but I think it's better to keep al-hut over here in the meaning of fish, as well as the fish that are fish, sorry, that are in the water, in the depths of water. وإن فضل العالم على العابد كفضل القمر ليلة البدر على سائر الكواكب وإن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء. Then he goes towards that. So this is all in reference to that famous hadith. It says والصلاة والسلام على تمان على تمان عفوا على تمان على أعمان على زبدة خلاصة الموجودات وعمدة سلالة المشهودات في الأصفياء الأزكياء وعلى آله الطيبين الأطهار الأتقياء وأصحابه الأبرار نجوم الاقتداء والاهتداء. He says then, and salutations and peace that are considered to be in the most perfect form. Atam is the superlative form of tamam, like from tamam, that is from of tam particularly, and the most tam from tamma. And al-a'man, that is the most inclusive of it, and this is which is these are dual forms of al-a'am, that is al-atamman, al-atammu, al-atamman, al-atammun, and al-a'ammu, al-a'amman, al-a'ammun. على زبدة خلاصة الموجودات. So this is not really redundant, because zubda technically refers to something that is like the crux of the matter, something that comes out. So a lot of times it refers to um, the butter, like that's churned out the butter, coming from zabada. Zabada yazbud, which means like to feed someone or to churn out butter from something. So zubda refers to like whatever you get. Zabad also like the froth. فأما الزبد فيذهب جفاء. As it comes in the Quran too, that as for the zabad, the froth, فيذهب جفاء. And or zabad al-rabi, it comes to. But zubda, the word itself, it refers to like a madda that is duhniyya technically. So it's like the butter, the cream, you can say. Khulasa actually means zubda too. I mean, whatever is the purest of the form. A lot of times you would say khulasatul as-samn. You would say that. So over there, it's the same thing when we refer to that. Okay, so extractions of it. So it's actually not entirely redundant. You can say that this is from the idafa of something that is إضافة الخاص إلى العام, from a balagha perspective. That is, zubda is considered to be more specific than khulasa. So khulasa is just anything that's extracted. Zubda is the whatever best is extracted. So whatever is extracted, whatever is like specified in a specific way, the best of the best of that too. Al-mawjudat, that is whatever has been given existence, whatever has been given wujud, that whatever things exist. And so what is being mentioned here is that in the mawjudat and things that are present, there are those that are chosen ones, the prophets, and among the prophets there is one who is the most chosen one, that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وعمدة سلالة المشهودات, as well as Umda refers to anything that would, if you were to remove it, then the things are they fall apart. That's why in Kalam too, they said this is considered to be umda, the mubtada and the khabar, because they were defined as ma يختل al-kalamu بحذفه. Right? Something if you were to remove it, then the kalam no longer makes sense. That's what a umda is. So like a pillar, literally. And sulala refers to something that is trickled down, something that is trickled down. So or like sent down. That's why an-nasl or dhurriya too is called sulala as well. Al-mashhudat. So I mean metaphorically can refer to anything that is sent down, that trickles down, right? That is وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ in that sense. So sulala over there refers to like shay qalil, يستل. That is something that is extracted. سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِين. It comes to the sulala over here refers to like something that was sent down. Al-mashhudat, things that have been considered to be witnessed. The mashhud of something. That is from the ism maf'ul of shahida, which means to witness something. So the mashhud is like you can say something that has some sort of witnessing established for it. That's why you say the yom mashhud. You say like it was like a day in which a lot of people came and it was like a recognized thing. So the recognized ones, the trickle down of it, of the recognized ones, you can say, or the recognized entities, and the umda of it, the best of it. So this is referring to, perhaps possibly referring to the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, that he came from the lineage of the prophets. Fil asfiya il azkiyai, the ones who were, this is the plural of Safi, Asfiya, and this is the plural of Zaki, al-Qiyas, that is. Asfiya means pure, Azkiya means pure, but like more internally so than externally. So you can say externally pure and internally pure. وعلى آله الطيبين الأطهار الأتقياء, as well as on his progeny. There were الطيبين, they were considered pure, and الأطهار, that is you know, pure as well. But you can say what were the difference between something that is considered to be tayyib and tahir. Uh, Technically, they will be the same. But because of the fact that it is related, that Abdullah, that is one of the children of the Prophet ﷺ, that he was actually tayyib, and he was also tahir. طيب and طاهر. This is a famous view that exists too. And this is the view of Ibn Hubayrah and many others. They said that, well, actually, they were only Al-Qasim and Abdullah, not Al-Tayyib and Al-Tahir. So they're not three or four. There were only two uh, male children of the Prophet ﷺ. They were called, there was Abdullah and there was Qasim, or Al-Qasim. And Al-Tayyib and Al-Tahir both were there were titles used for Abdullah, and Al-Qasim was different. So there were only two. That's one view. Ibn Hubayra and others had that view too. So based on that, it seems like in the expression itself, the tayyib and or you can say being tayyib and tahir is something that was like used sometimes interchangeably, sometimes like focusing on, if you were to combine them together, that oh, there are those who are inwardly pure and those who are outwardly pure too. Al-atqiya'i, that is the ones who are considered to be, this is the jam' of taqi, which comes in the ma'na of muttaqi as well. What is the muttaqi? Uh, that's a famous discussion, as in like what is the true definition of how would you define this? So usually when we're mentioning it, we just say that anyone who's God-fearing. Even though over here you can you can translate it as pious too, but it's important for students' knowledge to understand this. So Al-Tibi rahimahullah in Futuh al-Ghaib, that is like massive commentary on Al-Kashaf, he discusses this. He goes like, oh, like what's a muttaqi? And also adds to that a'rif. Is that al-muttaqi and al-a'rif is like the way to define it is الذي يؤمن ويصلي ويزكي, يعني the person who has affirmation, he believes ويصلي ويزكي, and he has the display of it too. أي يفعل الواجبات ويجتنب عن الفواحش. That is, he acts on those things that are mandatory. ويجتنب, and he refrains from those things that are fawahish, that are grave sins. This is definitely backed up with the understanding, or like it would just support the understanding that for a person to be muttaqi, is it a condition for the person to stay away from sagha'ir too or not? According to the majority, that is not a condition, as mentioned by my teacher, Shaykh al-Tahir. Sheikh Tahir ibn Ashur as well. And that is what a muttaqi is. So they're referred to as the ones who are God-fearing in that sense. وأصحاب الأبرار نجوم الاقتداء والاهتداء, and his companions that were also al-abrar is a jam' that is of bar or bar, both ways, where bar would be considered to be a mukhaffaf of bar, and because of the fact that there's a conflict of qiyas between fa'lun and af'al. Bar makes more sense to me. Nujum, the ones who are pious. I guess the distinguishing factor, because we're calling all the words pious here, is that abrar, or the piety, comes through obedience, you can say, right? Al-Muttaqi already defined. That is, as mentioned by Sayyid al-Sanad, that is Sharif al-Jurjani, as well as al-Tibi before him, that in Futuh al-Ghaib, he defines it as a person who يفعل الواجبات ويجتنب عن الفواحش. And a bar, or a bar, as a مخفف of it, is someone who's a طائع or مطيع, مخلص, etc. A person who is fulfills his promises, and the one who is known for coming through, you can say, and establishes piety through the man with piety plus integrity. نجوم الاقتداء والاهتداء, the ones who are considered to be the stars of guidance, I guess, of following, of being followed. الاقتداء, like the masdar of yours in the understanding of nujum, that are the ones that have اقتداء towards them. So اقتداء يقتدي means to follow something. والاهتداء, and the ones who are guided in the right direction. This 100% is referring to the famous hadith that is أصحابي كالنجوم. The meaning of the hadith isn't not only true if it's not established as a hadith, right? Like you can actually say that um, this is a hadith that is established in terms of meaning. That is, like if someone would say, were the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were the stars or not that could be compared to the stars or not? He would say definitely they can be compared to stars. But the Usuliyun, they mention this narration a lot to establish points. Ash-Shatibi and many others have brought this as a hadith, and the people who did takhrij of it, they commented on it and they said that, well, this narration is not established. There was like a lot of discussion about it too. But in terms of expression, there's nothing wrong in saying it. As Al-Qari also says in the Sulam, وآله وصحبه ذوي الهدى من شبهوا بأنجم في الاهتداء. He says that and his al and his sahb, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's progeny, and his companions, وآله وصحبه ذوي الهدى, the ones who guided others, al-huda, which is a Muslim from hada yahdi, من شبهوا بأنجم في الاهتداء, the ones who were resembled to, or the resemblance was drawn between them and the stars, fil ihtida, in terms of being guided, or in terms of being guided, as in like, oh, choosing to be guided. So you would choose to be guided by using stars, as the Arabs did it in the past. In terms of the authenticity of the narration itself, is this statement that is أصحابي كالنجوم بأيهم اقتديتم اهتديتم, that whoever you would do iqtida of, you would have ihtida. So whoever you were to follow, you would actually be guided. أصحابي, my companions, كالنجوم, are like stars. With whichever one that you follow, you will be guided, and you will be in the right direction. Ibn Mulaqin, rahimahullah, in Al-Badr al-Munir, which is a famous work on the Takhrij of Sharh al-Kabir. In that he discusses this, and he says هذا الحديث غريب لم يروه أحد من أصحاب الكتب المعتمدة. He says that none of the relied upon texts, compilations of hadith, actually have this narration. is gharib. Gharib, for those people who do not know, al-A'ini rahimahullah talks about it too. And one part of his al-Binayah is a famous expression that the many of the mukharrijun, the people who focus on the documentation of the narrations that come in the books of hadith, they've actually said that it is an expression that shows that we were not able to find it. Pretty much la asla lah, right? Like something that does not have a proper backing for it. Like when the word gharib is said, then it would mean that it was not found, right? Others other than al-Aini have talked about it too. But like whenever they say this, this is what they mean. So when he's saying gharib, he's not really saying that that it does not it's something that is rare but it's still related, you know? That's not the point. Like in the takhrij of that, that's what it means. In one part of al-Bina, it does seem like that he's saying la asl could be used differently. Like when he's al-Aini rahimahullah, when he's discussing the narration of Tawaf and one part of like Tawaf al-Qudum in al-Hidayah al-Binayah, he says هذا الحديث غريب وقيل لا أصل له. He says that, well, but it's perhaps you can say لا أصل له, right? But if you were to see like other commentaries, like Fath Qadir too, sometimes it comes like that, and others they would say, well, the hadith is غريب لا أصل له. They would say it together. Like in one part of in Fath Qadir, it says about the narration of Salat al-Nahar, عجمة, the famous narration. He says in the commentary it's mentioned غريب, and then he says قال النووي لا أصل له. النووي رحمه الله said that it does not have أصل. So you can say that these are corroborating things. And Al-Aini rahimahullah too, in when he's talking about the discussion of Nabash and in Kitab al-Sariqah, he comments on the narration that is mentioned by Al-Marghilani rahimahullah, that is لا قطع على المختفي. There is no there is no chopping of the hand that will happen for the mukhtafi. He says هذا حديث غريب لا أصل له. He said that too. But in other instances, he says, well, gharib actually can just pretty much mean that, it's something that does not have yes. That's why a lot of people say that, well, this narration is gharib. So this Ibn Mulaqin too, rahimahullah, when he's saying it's gharib, he's not really saying it can be narrated. Otherwise, it would not make sense that he's saying لم يروه أحد من أصحاب الكتب المعتمدة. It's like all the major compilations of hadith, they don't narrate something. This narration, as it comes in, it's attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. But he does mention وَلَهُ طُرُق, and he says that it has multiple chains. Every single chain of transmission of it has been criticized. The only discussion comes, can they corroboratively be considered to be such that the narration reaches a level of of something that is acceptable, that's possibly discussed. But uh, after discussing all this, Ibn Mulaqin rahimahullah, he actually brings the kalam of Ibn Hazm, right? And he says after تلخص ضعف جميع هذه الطرق, he says all the طرق that are related in the non-famous compilations of hadith, it seems like that every single one of them is weak too. He said لا جرى ما قال أبو محمد Ibn Hazm. He actually agrees with what has been said by Ibn Hazm, it seems like. Ibn Mulaqin. And I'm quoting this because everyone knows that Ibn Hazm is known to criticize a lot of mutun, as in he has a naqd al-matn sort of theory, which is good in terms of critical theory, but like critical theory and promoting critical thought. But he does end up rejecting a lot of hadith um, that are that are not that great. Sorry, that are actually established. Sorry, like which would be considered to be an action that was not that great. Like Ibn Hazm, he's known for his controversial views, and a lot of times that you can take good things from him, but mostly I would say that it's hard to take good things from him, with all due respect. يعني the fact that but if it's corroborated by scholars that came after, like the example that I gave is that Ibn Mulaqin is the one who actually quotes Ibn Hazm here, and it seems like he agrees with him too. He's not really refuting it. Then it's something that the scholars have not completely, like the unbiased ones, they've not completely rejected his kalam in that way. Otherwise, they very famously mentioned that, well, he's someone whose pen is not really considered to be that great. But if you were to see al-Mulaqin's al-Badr al-Munir, he relies on it extensively. His statements. He mentions it very, very extensively. You can tell that Ibn Mulaqin does not have that view, and even in the Tawdih, he mentions them. But you would notice that he's not, what do you call it, uh, that anti-Ibn Hazm, as sometimes we would see in certain things, in certain backgrounds. But as I told you, and his aqwal, when it comes to Jarh and Ta'dil, you would notice that they are also quoted in Mizan al-I'tidal and the veil of it. I mean, Mizan al-I'tidal you could say is al-Dhahabi's, but Zayn al-Iraqi's veil on it actually also has Kalam ibn Hazm related in it. That is the teacher of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and others. Ibn al-Laqan being also a teacher of him too. So anyways, coming back to this is, you can actually take some good from him. As you can say, Ibn al-Laqan, he takes some good from him too. But let's just rely on Ibn al-Laqan's understanding in case, Ibn Hazm's thing is not there. But he relates, he says, قال أبو محمد ابن حزم في رسالته الكبرى في إبطال القياس والتقليد وغيرهما, which is actually very problematic because he was from those people who was very anti-legal analogy and anti taqlid too. Taqlid obviously right off the bat is not something that is problematic. It's the way it's conducted, etc., that could have some issues. But like he was of the view that qiyas is completely problematic. But in that risala, he does mention هذا خبر مكذوب موضوع باطل لم يصح قط. He says that this narration is not just weak, it's actually a narration or a khabar that is makthub, that is been corroborated, been verified as a lie, like established as a lie. موضوع, it's fabricated. باطل, it's baseless. لم يصح قط, that's not established at all. He says that. And then he quotes al-Bazzar and others, and he goes like, well, one of the problems of هذا الكلام, he said لم يصح أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رواه, and then he mentions the different chains. But then after all that, he says this is the mitten part of it that is because he says بل هو مما يقطع على أنه كذب موضوع. He's like, you know what, if you were to look at the text itself as in something can be related like this from the Prophet ﷺ or not, he challenges the meaning of it. So this will create this broad spectrum as to how do we understand it, to understand to say that, well, this is something that could be said. And when we started talking about the hadith itself, and we said that, well, and the hadith has the meaning of it is correct, like al-Qari and al-Qari rahimahullah himself. And one of his writings, he says the meaning is actually correct. But it seems that Ibn Hazm disagrees with that. And Ibn Mulaqin in Al-Badr al-Munir, he seems to agree with Ibn Hazm too because he does not refute him after quoting these parts of the method that is criticized. So you can say among the latter these scholars, even in terms of its meaning, there was a dispute whether it could be established or not. So he says that, well, how can you say that this narration is authentic? لأن الصحابة اختلفوا. Is that because the Sahaba, they used to have major disagreements. فحرم واحد وحلل آخر. One of them would consider one to be something to be halal, the other one would consider another thing to be haram. So how can you actually say that whoever follows one of them, it will be considered to be proper? منهم, he says ذلك الشيء الذي حرمه صاحبه وأوجب بعضهم وأبطل غيره منهم ما أوجبه صاحبه. لو كان هذا الخبر حقا لكانت أحكام الله تعالى متضادة في الدين مختلفة حلالا وحراما معاذ الله. He says that if you were to say sometimes you would say that that thing that has been deemed unlawful, it will be the same thing that the other side would say that is lawful. So if you were to say that this narration is authentic and they can be followed and they can still be guided, then that would require that the ahkam of Allah ta'ala, the legal rulings of Allah ta'ala, are considered to be contradictory in terms of religious matters. مختلفة حلال وحرام, like something can be halal and haram at the same time. And then he he mentioned that this also contradicts the ayah ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. He says that it goes against that. And then فصح أن الاختلاف ليس إلا من عند غير الله, etc. However, the thing is that the way it's understood by the likes of al and others who actually said, من شبهه بأنجم في الاهتداء, they don't find it problematic. Many of the usuliyun that have actually went in that direction, the other side of the spectrum, which seems to be stronger, is that it does not really refer to because of the fact that Ibn Hazm was a person who was anti-taqlid and anti-qiyas in its totality or in their totality. It is not supposed to be understood that every single thing that has been said by them is considered to be haqq, that is 100%. this is something that people fail to understand, is that there has to be some sort of like a spectrum that you have to respect and say that, well, the possibility of it being incorrect is definitely there, but this is what seems to be correct at this time. So whenever you don't come across a contradiction, those are the people that you can actually follow. And also, you have a discussion about this too. Imam al-Haramain, as well as many others, have discussed the fact that is it possible for you to follow a companion in terms of ijtihad or not? Yes, no, whatever the discussion is, but the discussion does revolve around the fact that, well, a sahabi can sometimes be viewed to be a person who can be followed independently in terms of knowing whatever the Prophet ﷺ said. And based on that way of understanding it, there's nothing wrong with it. But obviously, if someone takes it literally and says that, well, every single one of them will lead towards something that is permissible and the person would be considered to be muhtada, or I guess sorry, ihtida would be the sorry intransitive. So we consider to be muhtadi. We will consider to be muhtada is a Muslim. Yeah, I apologize. Is like he will be upon muhtada, I guess you can say. Then that will be an invalid understanding. I hope that's clear, and I think that's a good way to understand it because of the fact that as Ibn Laqin, rahmallah, he agrees with it too, as well as others who came after Ibn Hazm as well, with what was said by him, is that interpretation should not be taken as the way to understand it. Why does that make a difference? Because of the fact that it's not open for interpretation in a way that it is established from the Prophet, because of the fact that none of the chains actually make sense. I hope that's clear. And we will stop here, inshallah, in our class, and we'll start with the Mabad in our next class because of the intro that the kind of we were not able to go any further. But it's fine. I mean, I wanted to cover more than this anyway. We'll stop our class here. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, Sheikh, sorry, just a question. With regards to al-Qari rahimahullah, how relied is he in terms of when it comes to matters of ifta and stuff like that?
Matters of Ifta, he does not really have, based on the popular division that is brought forth by the likes of Ibn Abdin, etc. He's not considered to be someone who is looked towards, as in like, what does al-Qari say about it, right?
Mhm,
Even in a controversial manner, like some people do talk about the madrasa that is Misriya,
mhm,
that is Egyptian way of looking at it, like Ibn Humam and Ibn Nujaym and a few others, like there are specific things that are regarded as like the anomalous views of the school.
mhm.
Even if from that aspect, he's never looked at. But in terms of tahqiq, as what verdicts that I've seen being passed, I've definitely seen him being quoted. So for those people who are kind of like beyond these restrictions that are created, as in like you cannot quote except from certain people, but they would actually have they themselves would be people who are considered to be like al-Qari themselves, right? And they would actually, I have seen him being quoted, so he's not considered to be someone that is off. When we're talking about ifta, we're talking about the practical nature of it, right? So some fatawa that I've read that were passed, I've definitely seen him being quoted on it in those fatawa. But is he considered to be from those people who are considered to be the mu'tamad alayhim, in the sense that people who do not have the ability to tahqiq and pass verdicts based on their own independent reasoning and understanding? Would they rely on them in a way that he would be considered reliable? No, they would not. But those who rely on him are usually the ones who have reached that level, so they would agree with him more so and quote him. So he does not have a specific status. He's too laterally for that, to be honest. As for like Ibn Abdin too, like who gave him this status, for example? It's people who came after him, right? He's the one who documents the statuses of different people. So he does not include himself. From the latter ones, sometimes they've commented on certain things and other things they've not commented about. So as for like just the work itself, as in does it hold a position that is respectable in the thing and you can quote from it? It's never been considered to be a text that was just regarded as, hey, this is a text that you would not quote from as well,
Okay.
right? So is the bab is maftuh. It's pretty much open, like as in can you rely on this text or not? Since the fact that it's considered to be, again, it's a very latter day, so it's not really like you would not find like a text that's like quoting it. So this is what's said in Fath Bab al Inayah, very popularly that is. But can you find it in other sources, like as in people who rely on it and their commentary notes that then they quote from the text? It's to do, and I've never seen anyone say that it's considered to be reliable. So it's kind of like in the gray area when it comes to that. But that's not the purpose of the text, right?
Mhm.
That's the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jazakallah
Yeah,
khair.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Uh, like I hope I was clear in in the answer.
No, that was clear. Yeah, that was good.
Okay,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah. Like it's not considered like Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, he has his
Mhm.
own tahqiq of it. Fath Bab al Inayah. And many of the students of his that I've come across, they mentioned that he used to rely on it. It's like a known fact that he had like a special اختصاص عناية with this text. And he used to love it, he used to praise it. In his own tahqiq, if you were to go, you would see that he considers it to be like one of the greatest texts of the Hanafiya. Because he was not of the view, like he did not really follow the whole process of like, well, these are the only ones that you can be relied upon. He would see that he goes out of his way many times too. But they would say, well, he had his own anomalous opinions too, right? So I have definitely seen him being quoted many times. Even my respected teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Taqi al-Uthmani, I've seen him when passing verdicts to have quoted him as well.
Okay.
And he used to work under Sheikh Muhammad Ashraf al-Uthmani anyway. Sorry, Sheikh Muhammad Ashraf al-Uthmani used to work under him, and I've never seen them like disagreeing on this matter as well. Oh, that's clear. Any other questions?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Could you
Alaikum assalam.
please repeat the linguistic analysis that you mentioned on different types of ja'ala in the beginning of the text?
جعل in text of منطق they've discussed this because they I guess سلم the سلم العلوم, the advanced سلم, not the al-Akhdari's منظومة. They say that جعل comes in two different. This is a terminology that they mentioned. جعل comes either as a جعل that is they say جعل الخلق, they would say sometimes, and جعل of التصير, which is if you were to like oversimplify it, you would say that well it refers to جعل that is with one مفعول به and جعل that is with two مفعول بهs, linguistically speaking. So when it comes with a single مفعول به, it always comes in the meaning of خلق. That's how they differentiate between the two. And when it comes with two مفعول بهs, it comes in the meaning of صير. That is this is what it is. So it's actually applicable in other text too. You can actually say that well جعل over here is of تصير and جعل over here is of خلق, and sometimes that is also referred to as the مفرد and مركب. جعل that is مفرد. And عبد الحليم اللكنوي in some of his حواشي on illegal and fiqh text, he actually mentions that too, because he had a very strong, like he had philosophical takes on a lot of he was usuli too, so he mentions this faida from his hawashi and some of the fiqh texts, some sorry usul texts. Hope that's clear.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
One more question, Sheikh. Just really quickly. In terms of studying this text, would you recommend looking at other texts that are of similar level, like the Ikhtiyar or Sharh al Nuqayah al-Qahistani, rahimahullah, and stuff like that?
uh you know, al-Qustani's text I would not recommend, honestly, because it's kind of like uh it's a text that I wouldn't say the opposite of Fath Bab al Inayah, but the problems that are solved a lot of times by Fath Bab al Inayah are actually not solved by al-Qustani. Like they're made by al-Qustani sometimes. Like some of the things that you would see in um with no disrespect obviously intended, it is strong in from one aspect, right?
Mhm.
Definitely. Like you can say that the work is considered to be strong from an aspect, right? But from other aspects, you would say it has a lot of weak material in it. But as for al-Ikhtiyar is a masterpiece,
Mhm.
right? Al-Ikhtiyar actually was the closest work that what I was thinking about it when I was talking about it too. Al-Ikhtiyar would be the closest text when it comes to Fath Bab al Inayah, like the style and everything. It's just that it's very restricted, right? It's like it's on al-Mukhtar. Al-Mukhtar is totally different. But you would definitely see that the style of writing, the style, the purposes, the maqasid are very similar. I would say Fath Bab al Inayah is a text that I consider to be better. even than al-ikhtiyar. But in terms of reliability and the popularity of the text, because al-mukhtar being one of those mutun that are extremely acceptable, al-ikhtiyar definitely takes the cake. But again, like this is in terms of iftar restrictions that are the normatives, right? And now that al-tahqiq too, you will have al-tahqiq is never refuted through this by those muhaqqiqun that actually have views that are backed up by proper research based on the being in line with the principles of jurisprudence of the Hanafiya. I mean the latter ones, right?
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions? No. Okay. Jazakumullah khaira. We'll conclude our class here, and we'll start with Amma Ba'd and a few other points that relate to introductory points. Perhaps go through al-Qari's life a little too, because I was thinking that we would have done that already in Kitab al-Sawm, but we might just touch on it a little as well as Sadr Sharia, possibly. Anything else that people want to do in the Muqaddimah of it, but we'll do that a little, and then we'll just go back to the text. Inshallah. Wa jazakumullah khaira. If there are more questions, you can actually share them in one of the groups too, possibly a Telegram group, or I'm not sure if there's a WhatsApp group for this yet or not. But we can discuss it in that, inshallah. Wa jazakumullah khaira. And I can possibly address it in the next class too, if you were to share it now. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.